Good afternoon. Thanks to you both for such a warm welcome and for inviting me to speak at the event today. Hope everybody watching's enjoying the event so far and that you've been looking forward to this session on how cyber threat intelligence can supercharge your business. So a little bit about myself to start with. My name's Steve Watts and I head up an awesome cyber security operations team at Aldermore Bank here in the UK. I've worked in IT and cybersecurity for around 20 years, primarily in the critical national infrastructure space. And prior to working at Aldermore Bank, I was the head of cybersecurity at Rathbones, Wealth Investment Management. And before that, I worked at Bank of America, where I was a VP of Incident Response. And later on in my career there, I became VP of Cyber Threat Intelligence. So I was really lucky to work with some of the best threat intelligence analysts available. With all that said, we've got quite a lot to cover today, and just a short amount of time, really. So we'll jump straight in. So a quick rundown on what I'm looking to cover today. We'll be going over exactly what cyber threat intelligence is. It means different things to different people in some cases. We'll go through the different domains or types of threat intelligence that exist. We'll take a look at the different sources of intelligence, and we'll also dive into the intelligence lifecycle. And then at the end, we'll wrap up with why cyber threat intelligence is important to you and to your business. Okay, so firstly, we need to understand what cyber threat intelligence actually is. And there are a number of definitions available out there, but the one that I've opted to talk about today is the one from Forcepoint, which defines cyber threat intelligence as information that an organization uses to understand the threats that have, will, or are currently targeting the organization. The information is used to prepare, prevent, and identify cyber threats looking to take advantage of valuable resources. So that's a really good description. The one thing that I would add to that additionally is that cyber threat intelligence is not just used for defensive purposes, but can also be used to inform and shape business decisions. But we'll cover some more of that in detail a little bit later on. For the most part, CTI centers around the criminals or threat actors, as we refer to them as. It focuses on their intent, their capabilities, and their tactics, techniques, and procedures, or TTPs, as we more commonly refer them to. Some other elements that are kind of key requirements for threat intelligence to make it useful are the fact that it needs to be accurate, it needs to be timely, it needs to be relevant. Nobody wants to be operating from stale intelligence or worse still, intelligence that is just completely wrong. So, for example, if you're in the army, no army wants to be told to raid the enemy only to find out that the enemy left that particular area that they've been deployed to weeks ago. Or also, in fact, a worst case scenario potentially is that they've been deployed to the totally wrong location. Likewise, as cyber defenders, we don't want to be given a list of, say, malicious domains that were part of an attack that took place a week ago. At that point, we've missed the opportunity to potentially proactively protect ourselves using that intelligence, and instead we'd have to use it reactively through the likes of threat hunting. And similarly, everyone's busy. We're all busy people. We need to focus on intelligence that is relevant to the mission of the business so that we don't start to experience intelligence fatigue or information overload. So, for example, I don't need to look at intelligence feeds that alert me to attacks on ATM devices if ATM devices aren't relevant to my business. Those sources can be filtered out and more relevant ones can be added that actually relate to my business. And finally, intelligence is only really valuable if it drives one or more actions as a result of that actual intelligence. It's all well and good being told about an attack that's taken place, but if you're not provided with enough information to take some sort of action on the back of that, such as implementing additional protective or detective controls, then it's not really intelligence at that point, it's just information. So cyber threat intelligence can be broken down into three main disciplines or capabilities. They're tactical, operational, and strategic. At the tactical intelligence level, we're really talking about atomic indicators of compromise, or IOCs as they're more commonly known. And these are the things like hash values for malicious files, malicious IP addresses or domains. And these are usually in relation to an active or imminent threat that needs to be dealt with really quickly. An example of this would be malicious domain names that were used in the recent Kaseya ransomware incident that compromised multiple MSPs. So those indicators of compromise would have needed to have been set up to protect the company really quickly as soon as it became available. The information could be leveraged, for example, by a SOC team to implement blocks and to conduct indicator of compromise searches in your environment to identify whether or not you'd actually already been compromised. Next, we've got operational intelligence. So operational intelligence is more focused on understanding the threat actors and the way that they operate. So it includes understanding the threat actors' capabilities, as well as the tactics, techniques, and procedures, or TTPs, that they use in their operations. And they can also be known as indicators of behavior, or IOBs in this case. So, as an example of this, when we talk about operational intelligence, this could include the tools and the malware that they're using, the types of systems or victims that they target. We again take the Kaseya example. Revil, the financially motivated group that was responsible for the attack, they use a double extortion technique. So, as part of the attack, they will get access to the company's network. They will laterally move around the network looking for important information from key systems. They'll then encrypt the files, and also they'll take that important information, exfiltrate it, and threaten to post that stolen data. They've also been known through a recent interview with one of the kind of the gang's leaders to carry out DDoS attacks and threaten also to inform victims' business partners in a bid to apply additional pressure to make those extortion payments. So that's the type of operational intelligence that we need to be aware of in order to ensure that we can bring that into the business, check what controls and processes we've got to put in place to deal with those types of attacks. And where we're lacking in any of those areas, we can obviously bolster defences just in case we were targeted. Okay, and finally, we've got strategic intelligence. Now, strategic intelligence focuses on the bigger picture. So this is more, at this level, we're talking about high level trends that are being observed that subsequently could drive a business decision. Again, using the ransomware as an example, current strategic intelligence shows that human-operated ransomware, like the Revil attacks, are rapidly increasing. So this type of information would allow a C-suite to make a decision, for example, to invest in cyber insurance that covers the ransomware as part of the company's operational resilience strategy. So in summary, through the use of some quotes from Sun Tzu, strategy without tactics is the slowest route to victory. Tactics without strategy is the noise before defeat. And from an operational perspective, know thy enemy. So as you can see, all three elements are really important to a successful CTI function. So like a number of disciplines, CTI comes with its own life cycle. With this one, there are a number of variations, but the most common that I've come across is the one on the screen today, which contains 5 various phases. First of all, we've got requirements. So really important to define your intelligence requirements. Without them, they kind of you won't be able to choose what threat intelligence is important to you as a business, and therefore you'll most likely find yourself collecting everything that you come across. And of course, with that much information, you're not going to be going to be able to do too much with it, and that's not where you want to be. So we don't want information fatigue. We want to be able to understand exactly what information is of use to us. So those requirements would normally be driven by key cyber risks that your business faces, which can often be established by carrying out threat modeling exercises. And requirements are often known as priority or primary intelligence requirements, which is often shortened to PIR. And these can be established either company-wide or actually broken down into specific business units. So, for example, financial crime teams and physical security teams or facility teams, they'll likely have their own priority intelligence requirements that they may want you to monitor for and report on. So, for example, in the case of the financial crime team, that team may be interested in lists of bank account numbers that are used in business email compromise or BEC attacks. And that's so that they can check those list of accounts and make sure that none of those accounts belong to their bank. If they do, then they can go in and shut those accounts down or deal with them as per their process and report them to law enforcement if needed. In the case of the facilities teams, they might want to be informed of physical threats to offices or physical attacks. For example, if it's a bank that owns a chain of ATMs, then they may want to be interested in things that may be targeting ATM attacks. Or another example would be social engineering scams, such as criminals entering buildings, social engineering the way in order to try and deploy rogue access points, around reception areas or that sort of thing. So those types of intelligence requirements will be logged by the CTI team, and then they'd be monitored for all relevant information would then be passed on to those teams to be able to take action on. And another example of an intelligence requirement could be driven from the fact that you may have a website that's critical to your business. That's likely to mean that a DDoS attack will be a key threat to your business, and as such, one of the intelligence requirements that you would add to your list would be to collect intelligence that relates to DDoS attacks and also the types of tactics, techniques, and procedures that will be used as part of those attacks as well. And again, this all needs to come back to taking some sort of action. So once you've gathered those types of that type of intelligence, you can bring that back, and it'll allow you to take the intelligence and improve your DDoS defenses, and therefore protect your business and its mission by driving that kind of protective action. Okay, next we've got collection. And once you've got your requirements and you're clear on what they are, then you need to collect intelligence that's going to meet all of those requirements. So this will involve identifying where you can source intelligence that is relevant to your business. So this could be from open sources such as Twitter, blogs, security feeds, or potentially from specialist closed or paid sources that are relevant to your particular industry. So, for example, in the financial industry, FS-ISAC is a closed intelligence sharing community that is quite often used. Next up, we've got analysis. So at the moment, you've got lots of information from various different sources, but as we said earlier, in order for it to be intelligent, among other things, it needs to be accurate, it needs to be relevant, it needs to be actionable, and this is where analysis comes in. Now, an analyst will take information and make it relevant to your business. They'll provide recommended actions based on that intelligence in order to obviously increase your business's security posture, or as we mentioned before, to help executives to make decisions regarding strategy. So intelligence analysis is a specialist skill. It involves a number of things, such as choosing the best analysis technique. This will allow the analyst to do things such as challenge any initial assumptions that may be made about the data that they're receiving. They'll be able to consider alternative explanations for the data and look for data that seems out of place or inconsistent. So it's far more than just copy and pasting intelligence from a blog and then sending it on to somebody within the business. Moving on from analysis, we've got dissemination. You can have the best intelligence in the world, but in order for it to be useful, it needs to get to the right people that can take some sort of action. Otherwise, it's useless. So the dissemination phase covers who the people are that you will send the intelligence onto. It includes the type of format that will be used. So, will it be PowerPoint? Will it be an email? It also includes the cadence of the update. So, for example, will the intelligence be a daily email briefing that goes to your SOC team? And that email could contain technical indicators that they can use to implement blocks or carry out threat hunts? Or will it be something more like a monthly State of the Nation presentation to senior executives? And if that's the case, we'd be looking at more high level strategic type of intelligence. Now, either way, whichever of those it is, the product created needs to be concise, actionable, and should be presented using a language that is relevant for the intended audience. There's no point talking about indicators of compromise to your C-suite. It will mean nothing to them. It's obviously a lot more about risk and those sorts of things. So be very specific in terms of the language that's used for your audience. And finally, we've got feedback. So feedback is the opportunity for the recipients or the stakeholders receiving the intelligence to state if those requirements have been met in that particular instance, or whether intelligence requirements may have changed since the last time that they were reviewed. So it's an opportunity also for the stakeholders to change the format So if they're used to getting an email, but they'd rather have a presentation to them, or a phone call, it allows them to change the cadence of the product if needed as well. So that way the analyst knows that the product that they're producing is actually meeting the business needs. And this is a step that's quite often overlooked, but it's really important to make sure that the CTI analyst is continuing to be focused on the right things and delivering the service that is needed by the business. And then at that point, once we've been through the intelligence life cycle start all over again, making continuous improvements to the people, processes, and technology that are being used to actually deploy that capability. So why is cyber threat intelligence actually important to your business? So firstly, it allows you to really focus on the threats that are of relevance to your company. So what does that mean? It means that you're not going to be wasting time, you're not going to be wasting effort and money on less important or irrelevant threats that will take up time and keep you busy. With so many different attacks and groups and TTPs to monitor and look for, being able to filter out the noise and focus on the ones that are really the most important to your business means that your security team can operate effectively and efficiently. And once you've been able to identify your priority threats, they can then inform an action plan in order to reduce risk to business. So this is going to mean that the plan will be more focused, and because of that, you'll be able to help drive a more realistic budget requirement, for example, as part of your cybersecurity strategy. Senior stakeholders can more easily see how the budget maps to a risk reduction plan, which is something that is tangible to them. And it's also based on real world intelligence, which makes it more compelling from a business case perspective, rather than one that centers on things like fear, uncertainty, and doubt, which is not going to be a good place to be in from a security perspective. We want to be, going on real intelligence based requests. And on a more technical level, threat intelligence can be used by your SOC teams and SecOps teams to implement proactive defensive controls or to hunt for any badness that maybe already in your environment that was missed by your existing defenses. So this is really important when we consider things like dwell time for attacks. Dwell time for attacks is reducing massively at the moment, meaning that the time it takes for an attacker to gain a foothold on your network through to executing their final attack. So, for example, deploying ransomware, well, that time is getting shorter and shorter. So, with that in mind, proactive threat hunting gives you the ability to find those attacks that may have been missed previously, which obviously means reducing risk to the business. And threat intelligence, obviously, as we mentioned before, can be used to drive key business decisions. So, for example, if we take an investment firm that may be looking to invest in a company or in a product that could be seen by some people as unethical, as it goes against that group or that person's ideology, this could in turn could turn into an increased risk for the business. And in this case, potentially opening a door for the business to be targeted by hacktivist, for example. So knowing that, a cyber threat intelligence team can use that information to inform the business of the potential consequences of that business decision. That could include things like, being more exposed to the types of attacks that are often favoured by hacktivists, so things like DDoS attacks, website defacements. And at that point, the security team will have the opportunity to inform the business that any additional in regards to any additional investment in security controls against those types of attacks that may have to occur as a result of that business decision that's made. Okay, so some of the key takeaways from today's session. Firstly, the main thing to point out, I guess, at this stage for many people that are maybe watching and thinking, I don't have the capability to have a dedicated cyber threat intelligence team. This is one of the things, it's not always an option. So you definitely need to start small on this. Not everybody has got the budget or the resources that may be required to set up a large cyber threat intelligence team. So as I say, start small, build up gradually over time. I think having a basic capability to kind of understand and to be able to monitor the threat landscape is definitely better than having no capability at all. So take the time just to start your journey off, and build it up gradually over time. And as I say, the quickest way to do this quite often is to just spend the time to identify the main threats to your business. So, as mentioned before, carry out that threat modeling exercise, those risk assessments that you need to do, that they'll, really help you at that stage. Once you've identified those main threats, you can start to look into the relevant adversaries that you may come across. Once you understand those adversaries, you can look at the types of attacks that they've been responsible for, and you can start to look at the tactics, techniques, and procedures that they use. Once you've got that, then they could be mapped to controls that you need to put in place, and you can then carry out a gap analysis against those controls, and you can then put a plan in place to implement the ones that may be missing or maybe need to be improved. And that obviously that analysis can be used to underpin a business case for the relevant controls to be implemented, and any additional headcount that may be required at that stage. And this is one that I hear quite often, that cyber threat intelligence is seen as just a matter of blocking or chasing, hunting for indicators of compromise in an environment. And hopefully, we've kind of quashed that theory from today's presentation. That there's a lot more to cyber threat intelligence than just kind of hunting for indicators of compromise. So a key point on this throughout all of this is not to drown in data. I see quite often companies that are new to cyber threat intelligence, as I say, subscribing to as many feeds as possible. There's lots of them out there, lots of blogs, really useful blogs, but we don't want to run into information fatigue. We don't want to, run into data overload. It's very easy to subscribe to all of those feeds, but you'll soon find yourself drinking from a fire hose, basically. So by all means, subscribe to those feeds, and then if they're email based, pipe them off to a folder so that it's not taking up your time all the time. But you've at least got something that you can refer to as and when you've got the time, and you've also got something there to search for historically. Should you need to do that. And again, at the stage when you're starting out, as you build up your priority intelligence requirements, you can really then take a look at the types of sources that you've already subscribed to and map them across and see which ones are meeting those intelligence requirements. And where they don't, then we can go and switch those blog feeds off, switch off those threat intelligence feeds, so that you're really reducing the noise down to something that you can spend time getting hold of that intelligence, analysing it, and making it actionable for your teams within the business. The next piece of advice is to potentially look at outsourcing your cyber threat intelligence capability to a third party. Now, as I say, because not everybody has got the skills in house or has got the size of the teams or the resource to have that kind of stood up as a full-time employee, a good option is to look at what third parties can offer for you. It's a really quick way to leverage the benefit of cyber threat intelligence without kind of putting a large demand on your team or without having to get additional headcount into your team. Elements of the process can then slowly start to be introduced into your team over time as resource allows and as skills develop. So there's lots of kind of third parties out there that will be able to help you with this. And again, they can carry out cyber threat intelligence requests for information. So if there's a certain group that you are interested in, you can put those requests for information out to them and they'll send you reports. They can send you key information on the types of attacks that you're interested in, or the types of TTPs that you may be interested in based on your intelligence requirements that we spoke about. They can also offer things such as dark web monitoring or online brand protection, looking for misuse of your brand, whether that's through phishing or business email compromise types of attacks that they may have access to. So really quite a lot of different capabilities that they can provide, also including things such as takedown services. So if they do spot a phishing website, that's set up, they can go and potentially act on your behalf to take legal recourse against the ISPs that have got that set up. You can demand for the website to be taken down, and obviously then in that case protecting your business on your behalf. That said, one of the other kind of things to dispel is that cyber threat intelligence isn't, the silver bullet that many people think it is. A lot of people kind of look at cyber threat intelligence and think, if I understand everything that's out there and all of that information is coming into me, then I'm going to be a lot more protected. And that is the case, but that is only the case if you've already got good fundamental cybersecurity controls and processes in place. And what I mean by that is, we mentioned it earlier on in the presentation that intelligence is it's only intelligence if it's actionable. So, for example, you can have lists of malicious indicators sent to you multiple times a day from a mailing list or from one of your intelligence community groups. But if you don't have a SIEM system that kind of integrates all of your logs into one place and correlates them all, then you're not going to be able to take that those indicators and go and search for them in your environment. So at that point, it's just information. It's not intelligence. You can't take action against it. You can't go and perform those threat hunts. So it's not about just having cyber threat intelligence capability. Cyber threat intelligence is something that you would tend to look to place over existing processes, fundamental processes that you've already got to a good place. Cyber threat intelligence, just sit on top of those and act as a force multiplier. And lastly, obviously, but most importantly, cyber threat intelligence can supercharge your business if it's implemented correctly. So thanks very much for listening. There was a lot to cover today in a short amount of time. So I appreciate you taking your time out of the day to come in and listen to my talk. If you do want to carry on the conversation, jump over to Twitter where I'm on there as SecBoy UK, or feel free to find me on LinkedIn. And in the meantime, I hope you enjoy the rest of the event and have a safe day.